we've got a special guest coming up next, which I am super excited about. I think we are going to move on. Thank you, Derek. So I'm excited to have MG here. MG is the CFO at DroneDeploy. She spent over a decade helping VC-funded growth stage companies establish critical financial and operational foundations. She's had an incredible career across amazing companies like Copper, Strava, Revision 3. And before the startups, she did big tech. She was 6 years. She described it as devoted 6 years. Yahoo, where she did biz ops, strategy, FP&A, and she made her transition not from marine biology, like a lot of folks here in the chat today, but from investment banking at Prudential Securities. Thank you so much, MG, for joining us.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And of course, your current role, CFO at DroneDeploy, where you have spent an entire
3 weeks.
3 weeks. All right. So
I'm very fresh into my new role.
As much practice for you than it is for us as we learn. Tell us a little bit more about DroneDeploy, and then tell us a little bit about your role there.
Yeah, so DroneDeploy makes software for drones that helps businesses manage complex job sites. So our software automates everything from flight to insight and allowing teams to survey large areas and make informed decisions quickly, safely, and accurately.
So tell us a little more about the kind of sites that we'd see, the drones that your software would be powering.
Yeah, so our big industries that we work with are, we started actually in agriculture, but we also moved into construction, and we do a lot of work with energy as well. Amazing.
And so tell us a little bit about what your role is going to be. I know it's still new, but tell us a little bit more about, why you've joined the team and what your plans are.
Yeah, so I joined as CFO, just as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and I'm really excited about the product and the team. And it's been an amazing couple of weeks just kind of getting up to speed. I joined DroneDeploy. I'm actually from a small town, Louisiana. My grandfather was a sugarcane farmer in Louisiana. My father was a mechanical engineer who started a company designing and building sugar refineries. And my brother joined his company shortly after he graduated from college, also a mechanical engineer, and took the business into designing power plants. And as I was evaluating the opportunity at DroneDeploy and looking at the product, it really resonated on a very personal level, because I thought about what the technology could have done for my grandfather, who instead of walking the sugarcane fields to evaluate where there could be a problem, he could have used the drone technology to, more quickly, more automated, assess any issues that was happening with what he was growing. And likewise, I see what my dad and my brother could have done to leverage the technology to evaluate the progress on the job sites where they were building out these plants and refineries. So that's what brought me to the company. I really saw this opportunity for this technology for these sort of older school industries to really disrupt them and make them operate better, and make the people that work in these industries operate better as well.
Amazing. So we're really focused on transitions tonight. So there's three big transitions that I want to focus on. One is I want to tear apart the story of how you ended up at DroneDeploy, because super cool story, but I want the nitty gritty. I want the tactical of who did who messaged who, where it all began. I want to also tonight talk about the journey from big tech to startup. And I want to then end with, non-tech, which we've been talking a little bit tonight, into technology. So first, how did DroneDeploy even get on your radar?
Yeah, well, I was not looking, right? I had been very happy at Copper. I'd had a really interesting 3 years there. And as I've described it, I feel like I was 3 different CFOs at Copper. I was there kind of earlier on, right after we raised our Series C, where we were in hypergrowth mode, holding on for dear life. And really the role of the CFO and the finance team was to enable growth and start to build the foundation there for the company. But really more than anything, just not get in the way of the growth. Right. Then we moved to the second phase where a new CEO came in, and we thought about really kind of being a lot more focused and making strategic investments in the business. And so there I became sort of this surgical CFO and really evaluating the areas of the business where we should be doubling down. And then my third stage was the CFO in the age of COVID, right? Where it was like, oh my goodness, this is bad. What are we going to do? And so, and actually what was interesting is my first startup, and we will get back to this, but my first startup was at Revision 3, and I joined Revision 3 in the fall of 2008, which was kind of the last time we were experiencing a global economic meltdown, right? So there was some pattern recognition, which I could draw upon. But it was a really robust time. And I was actually, even despite some of the challenges the business was facing, was not looking for a change. But a woman that I've known for a really long time, a recruiter who is just an amazing woman. She's become a friend in addition to being amazing at her job. But she reached out and she said, "Look, I've got something." And I said, I still feel like I've got work to do at Copper. I'm not ready to move on yet. And she was like, "Just have a conversation." And so I had that conversation. I met the CEO and just immediately clicked. There are just those times when you meet with folks in your professional life. So we were like, okay, there's something here. This is good. And then kind of the follow-on conversations I had, the more I got to know the business, despite the fact that, yes, in the age of COVID, the business is just performing so well. So that was really exciting to see. And the organization that's been built up around the product and it's just, what can I say? It's been really great getting to know them all. And so it just happened naturally. It just fell into place.
Well, it happened naturally, but what I take from it actually is it happened because you've built some great relationships over many years and a great reputation for doing great work. And so sometimes inbound opportunities can be, really compelling and change the course of your career. And sometimes we forget to maybe check our LinkedIn inbox or respond to an email because we think, if it's coming in, it's probably not worth it. But here was a whole career change for you, which is great. You talked about the 3 stages of CFO that you did in 3 years, which is unbelievable. I'd love to hear, which is your favorite CFO hat to wear? Is it hypergrowth? Is it discipline? Is it strategic investments for the future? What do you like best?
For me, and this is what I was excited about DroneDeploy, right? Which is in my bio, it says the same thing. It's about getting that foundation in place. And so regardless of where the company is in its growth trajectory, that's what I see my fundamental job as. And I think about it as a 3-stage approach, right? With stage 1 is just being the person and the team to drive the what of the numbers and making sure that there's one source of truth for how we're evaluating the business from a financials, from a metrics perspective. And you'd be surprised that that's oftentimes quite difficult.
Not surprised.
Not every company I've joined, there's just been this question of like, what the numbers are and where do you go to find the real numbers. The second stage is the why, right? So once you figure out what the numbers are, then you have to evaluate why do they look the way they do and what's going on. And then stage 3 is, I think, kind of what I really feel like my key role is the insights. And it's, what do we do about it? So we know what the numbers are. We know why they look the way they do. So now what do we do? What do we do? What levers do we pull in order to continue to drive growth, to reaccelerate if things have gone sideways? But that's what I see.
Where creativity comes in for sure. I love it. So you're now certifiably a startup junkie, which is great. But it wasn't always that way. So I'm wondering, you had a devoted 6 years at Yahoo. What changed that inspired you to go from big corporate tech into the garage?
Yeah, well, I loved my time at Yahoo, and as I think about kind of the companies where I landed after Yahoo, the majority of them tie back to some connection that I had during my time at the company there, and the alumni network that built up around Yahoo during those times. But I actually joined Yahoo when it wasn't a huge tech company. It was about 1,000 employees. When I left, it was, I guess, in the 15 to 20,000 employee range. So it was big tech. But when I joined, it was this, smaller, scrappy company. It was 2002, where again, kind of coming off the heels of the first internet meltdown. There was a lot of building to do. So the team that I joined actually within Yahoo was only about 25, 30 people. And so from there it was, kind of learning the business, very early in my career at that point, but understanding like, what do we need to know to run the business? And while I started in business development, I moved quickly into what was then, biz ops at Yahoo, business operations. And it was about, let's look at the metrics. Let's understand what is driving the business. Let's figure out, let's leverage that data, those metrics, the analysis in order to drive the long-term business, And
seems
so
like a pattern that you've mentioned already before.
Yeah, exactly. So it was that's kind of where I learned, what I do. Like my kind of the foundation for me as a CFO came from those early days at Yahoo. And so I got to see a lot of different parts of Yahoo. I went from business operations to FP&A. I worked on Yahoo Travel and Yahoo Local. And some e-commerce businesses. And then I moved to Yahoo Personals, which was Yahoo's online dating site. So that was fun, but that was like a consumer subscription business. And then ultimately I was running a team of finance and biz ops folks who ran all of Yahoo's marketplaces businesses. So it was, 6 or 7 different products and P&Ls.
Right.
And then I got to spend some time on the sales side. And so, but, as I was there, the company was growing. It became tougher to make decisions. You could kind of see those analyses that you'd built. You'd see, what the numbers would indicate would be the right decision. And it would just take a really long time for those decisions.
You have 15,000 people to inspire and steer the ship by the end, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Did you see yourself when you started? It seems like that was a real rocket ship time for you, and all the things that you got to experience is pretty amazing, and goes back to the idea of getting lots of broad exposure and doing a random walk and seeing all the different that encourage what you do. But did you see yourself joining a tech company when you started your career? Like, how did that even come about in the first place?
Oh, that's such a great question. No, I did not. In fact, I loved investment banking. I was one of those strange people that loved the deal making aspects and the analytics aspects of it combined that I just thought was, I just loved it. And so I went to graduate school. I went to business school, fully expecting to go back into investment banking or go, directly back into finance. But I had a really wonderful professor who was teaching a brand new course at Dartmouth called Technology and Strategy. And it sort of introduced the industry to me. And I just started poking around and actually ended up did my summer internship between my first and second years back out here in the Bay Area and actually did my internship at Yahoo and loved it. It was awesome.
Were they recruiting on campus at the time?
There were, but there had been 2 alums from Tuck who had gone to Yahoo. One was employee number 14, so very early at Yahoo. And then another woman who had graduated the year before I started school, who was there, who I got to know. So no, there was no sort of formal recruiting process on campus. It was just through personal connections and the alumni network.
And it seems like that's also been a hallmark of your career, the personal connections that got you to Yahoo from Tuck, all the relationships you built at Yahoo that inspired sort of the rest of your career moves over the last, all the startups. And then, of course, your connections with a recruiter, that always exciting call that turned into something really special.
Exactly. It's very
for
true.
people that are building their careers, aspiring to startup CFO or startup executive type roles. What kind of advice do you have them for them to do, whether they're in a current role or looking for their next one?
It is so difficult to carve out that time to nurture the network. It is, right? Everyone is, especially now being at home, right? Where I don't know about you, but I'm online from 7 o'clock in the morning till, 10 o'clock at night, except for a couple hours after my kids to bed and fed dinner and, you know, that sort of thing. But it's so important to nurture those networks and stay connected with people. And so now we have to be very deliberate now in our networking. And in fact, even, I mean, I'm taking those lessons around networking to my new role, is trying to get folks, those conversations that would happen organically in the kitchen over a cup of coffee or, you know, over a beer on, you know, Friday afternoon as we're wrapping up for the week. You have to be so deliberate. So that's my one key advice, especially when you find those mentors and those folks who are more senior, even if they're not in your same function. It's so important to
I love it.
Key relationships and keep them alive.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, it's not just about the work; it's about finding those places in between to build those relationships. Hey, MG, thank you so much for sharing your story and your time and your insights with the TechTO community.
Oh, thank you, Jason. It was a pleasure being here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.